A World Remade, the Treaty of Versailles and its aftermath. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in the opulent Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, was meant to be a definitive end to the horrors of World War I. It was a momentous occasion attended by leaders from around the world, all hoping to forge a lasting peace. The guns fell silent on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the armistice was declared, marking the end of 4 years of unprecedented carnage and destruction. World War I, the war to end all wars, finally ended. Soldiers returned home to joyous celebrations, their weary faces reflecting both relief and the haunting memories of the trenches. Yet the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, sowed the seeds of future conflict. The treaty imposed severe penalties on Germany, including substantial territorial losses and crippling reparations, which many historians argue were overly harsh and punitive. Germany, blamed for the war, faced harsh reparations and territorial losses. The once mighty nation was left economically devastated and politically humiliated, its people burdened with a sense of injustice and betrayal. This bred resentment and instability. The economic hardship and national humiliation fueled widespread discontent, leading to political unrest and the rise of extremist movements. The League of Nations emerged from the ashes of war. Conceived as a beacon of hope, this international organization aimed to prevent future conflicts through diplomacy and collective security. It sought to provide a platform for dialogue and negotiation, hoping to resolve disputes before they could escalate into war. However, it lacked enforcement power, and the United States, wary of entanglement in foreign affairs, refused to join. President Woodrow Wilson's vision of a united international community was undermined by the Senate's decision, reflecting America's growing isolationism. The League's weakness proved fatal. Without the participation of key powers and lacking the means to enforce its resolutions, the League struggled to maintain peace and stability. The 1920s witnessed a period of economic growth and social change, particularly in the United States. The post-war boom brought prosperity and innovation, transforming cities and lifestyles. The Roaring Twenties saw flappers dancing the Charleston and jazz music filling the airwaves. It was an era of cultural revolution, with new fashions, music, and social norms challenging the old order. This era of prosperity was short-lived. Beneath the surface of the economic boom lay deep-seated vulnerabilities and speculative excesses. The stock market crash of 1929 plunged the world into the Great Depression. The sudden collapse of financial markets triggered a global economic crisis, leading to widespread unemployment and poverty. Millions lost their jobs and homes. The Great Depression brought unprecedented hardship, with breadlines and shantytowns becoming common sights in cities around the world. Economic hardship fueled political extremism, setting the stage for another global conflict. The desperation and disillusionment of the 1930s provided fertile ground for radical ideologies, leading to the rise of totalitarian regimes and ultimately the outbreak of World War II. The Roaring Twenties and the gathering storm: social change and economic upheaval. The 1920s were a time of contradictions. The devastation of World War I cast a long shadow, yet a sense of optimism, particularly in the West, fueled a surge in creativity and cultural experimentation. The Jazz Age flourished, challenging traditional social norms. Women, empowered by their wartime contributions, embraced new freedoms, exemplified by the flapper movement. However, beneath the surface of prosperity, economic inequalities festered. The rapid growth of the 1920s was built on shaky foundations, fueled by speculation and easy credit. The agricultural sector in particular struggled. Overproduction and falling prices led to widespread hardship in rural areas. The descent into darkness, the rise of totalitarianism, and the onset of World War II. The 1930s witnessed the rise of totalitarian regimes in Europe and Asia. In Germany, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party, fueled by nationalist fervor and resentment over the Treaty of Versailles, seized power in 1933. Hitler's ideology, based on racial purity and German dominance, plunged the world into darkness. In Italy, Benito Mussolini established a fascist dictatorship characterized by extreme nationalism and suppression of dissent. In Japan, militarists took control, driven by expansionist ambitions in Asia. These regimes, each with their own particular characteristics, shared a disdain for democracy, a reliance on propaganda and terror, and a belief in their own destinies. The failure of the League of Nations to confront these aggressors emboldened them. Hitler, emboldened by the weak response to his remilitarization of the Rhineland, annexed Austria in 1938 and Czechoslovakia the following year. The world watched nervously, hoping against hope that war could be averted. Section 4, A World Ablaze. The global struggle of World War II and its devastating consequences. World War II engulfed the globe in a maelstrom of unprecedented violence and destruction. The war, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, involved more than 100 million people from over 30 countries. It was a conflict that saw the full mobilization of nations' economic, industrial, and scientific capabilities, leading to a scale of warfare never before witnessed. From the battlefields of Europe to the jungles of the Pacific, millions fought and died in a conflict that tested the limits of human endurance. The European theater saw brutal clashes such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the D-Day landings, while in the Pacific, battles like Midway and Iwo Jima became legendary for their ferocity. The war saw technological advancements from radar to the atomic bomb that would forever alter the course of human history. Innovations in aircraft, tanks, and naval vessels changed the nature of combat, while the development of nuclear weapons introduced a new era of potential global annihilation. The Nazi regime, driven by its ideology of racial hatred, unleashed an unprecedented genocide upon the world. Their propaganda machine spread lies and hatred, leading to the systematic extermination of entire communities. The Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others deemed undesirable by the Nazis, stands as a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity. The liberation of concentration camps revealed the horrors of the Nazi atrocities to the world, leaving an indelible mark on human history. The tide of the war turned with the entry of the United States, drawn into the conflict by the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. This event galvanized the American public and led to a massive mobilization of troops and resources. American industrial might and manpower, combined with the resilience of the Soviet people battling on the Eastern Front, eventually overwhelmed the Axis powers. The relentless production of war supplies in American factories and the fierce determination of Soviet soldiers played crucial roles in the eventual Allied victory. The war ended in 1945 with the unconditional surrender of Germany in May and Japan in September, marking the end of one of the darkest chapters in human history. Section 5. From the Ashes of War. The formation of the United Nations and the dawn of the Cold War. In the aftermath of World War II, as the world grappled with the staggering costs of conflict, a new international order began to take shape. The devastation left behind by the war was unprecedented, with cities reduced to rubble and millions of lives lost. The global community recognized the urgent need for a platform where nations could come together to resolve disputes peacefully and prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. Determined to prevent another global conflagration, representatives from 50 nations gathered in San Francisco in 1945 to draft the Charter of the United Nations. This historic conference marked a significant turning point in international diplomacy. The delegates worked tirelessly, often late into the night, to create a framework that would foster cooperation and dialogue among nations. This new organization, built on the principles of international cooperation and collective security, aimed to promote peace, security, and human rights for all. The United Nations was envisioned as a beacon of hope, a place where countries could address their grievances and work together to build a better future. Its various agencies and programs were designed to tackle global challenges, from poverty and hunger to health and education. However, the wartime alliance between the Western powers and the Soviet Union began to unravel as the Cold War took hold. The unity that had been forged in the fight against a common enemy quickly dissolved, giving way to suspicion and rivalry. The ideological differences between the capitalist West and the communist East became increasingly pronounced, setting the stage for a prolonged period of geopolitical tension. The ideological divide between the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, dominated by the Soviet Union, cast a long shadow over international relations for decades to come. This divide was not just political, but also cultural and economic, affecting every aspect of life in the countries involved. The world was effectively split into two camps, each vying for influence and control on the global stage. The Cold War was a multifaceted conflict, characterized by ideological struggle, proxy wars, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. Nations around the world found themselves caught in the crossfire as the superpowers sought to expand their spheres of influence. From the Korean Peninsula to the jungles of Vietnam, proxy wars erupted, causing immense suffering and loss of life. Both superpowers engaged in a global arms race, developing increasingly destructive weapons in a terrifying balance of terror. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction ensured that neither side could risk a direct confrontation without facing catastrophic consequences. This precarious balance kept the world on edge, as the threat of nuclear war loomed large over everyday life. Espionage, propaganda, and covert operations became hallmarks of this era. Intelligence agencies on both sides engaged in a shadowy battle for information and influence, employing spies, double agents, and sophisticated surveillance techniques. Propaganda efforts sought to win hearts and minds, painting the opposing side as the ultimate villain. This clandestine warfare added yet another layer of complexity to an already tense global situation. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning.